I call the Honourable Pete Hodson.
Mr. Chairman, part 2 is to copyright what part 1 was to trademark, and in any case it's intellectual property regulation, it's IPR, it's how we ensure that innovations that derive from our fair shores can make it across. We can export those innovations and protect them, and it also means that we are protecting the New Zealand consumer from counterfeit goods arriving on our shores from somewhere else. Now, let me give you a couple of examples so that we now begin to understand the strident import of this sort of legislation. The first example I would offer up would be the golden kiwi fruit, which has got a trademark called Zespri. It's got a bunch of intellectual property around it that one can buy and sell, in fact, which has been bought and sold in the last 10 years, and which needs to be protected. If one goes to Italy, one will see kiwi gold being grown there. If one goes to an island off as part of Korea, off the mainland of Korea, south of the mainland of Korea, quite a lot of kiwi gold being grown there. Some kiwi gold being grown in South America, and all of it has to be branded, whether it's copyright, trademark, or whatever other type of intellectual property protection it enjoys, in a way that the consumer can believe that it's buying the real thing. And what's more, Zespri set aside a certain proportion of their budget to defend a certain proportion of the counterfeits that come along. In this case, the counterfeit is in the form of plant material which is derived other than from New Zealand. And the end result of that is that the kiwi fruit industry is able to extract a premium because they control not only who grows the stuff, but they control the science around it, and they control, really importantly, the quality around it. And that's why they want to protect their trademark or their copyright to the extent that they do. A more serious example concerns pharmaceuticals. And the reason that it's more serious is that a pharmaceutical is not only going to be counterfeit in the sense that, Johnson & Johnson might be getting done in the eye, being sort of put out of pocket by someone who's selling one of their products in a counterfeit manner, but of course its bioactivity might be different. And at that point, human health and safety comes into play, and that's why the management of counterfeit pharmaceuticals, we're not talking here generic pharmaceuticals, that's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm talking about counterfeit pharmaceuticals. The management of those is really important. And it's the World Health Organization estimates that 10% of pharmaceuticals are counterfeit. And they are largely sold and traded in third world nations, but not entirely so. And in New Zealand, we have to maintain a level of vigilance, which we do through MedSafe and through other organisations, including our pharmacovigilance service, which happens to operate out of the very fine electorate of Dunedin North that I have the privilege of representing. We maintain an eye on that stuff, which is it's a very, very close eye. It's actually very close to a closed system, notwithstanding the internet and people being able to buy and sell as they will in small quantities. So the idea of getting on top of any counterfeit pharmaceuticals becomes terribly important, because it deals much more with human health and safety as well as the loss of cash. So those are a couple of examples where it becomes immediately apparent that intellectual property rights are of consequence. And I'll make one other comment before I resume my seat. The use of intellectual property rights in New Zealand is growing reliably and quite encouragingly off a really, really low base. And this is back to an old saw about how New Zealand science is good and how New Zealand commercialisation ability of science is not good. and that goes on as an argument or a debate for yonks, and I shan't do that, but I will make the point that more and more New Zealand innovators, he said broadly, are realising the importance of getting good intellectual property rights, Mr. Chairman.
I call the honourable member Stewart now.